This is the final video for Xerxes, once again with the evaluation of Xerxes, and we're condensing ancient and modern interpretations and the value and limitations of a source, in this case, Persepolis. So these are some of like the ancient charges or the ancient kind of accusations of Xerxes. It's also kind of good to note that he's often seen as a failure of a king. And a humiliated king through our Helleноcentric ancient interpretations. Okay. So rather than reading all of this out, the notes are here. You should know what each of them kind of mean as well. Okay. So our more modern interpretations, they're really trying to provide a more balanced assessment of Xerxes. They are trying to put together the fragmented nature of Persian sources to try and assess him with new lenses rather than from a Greek lens. And generally, your historians that have more Persian archaeological and kind of epigraphical sources generally tend to be more favorable to Xerxes. Okay. In terms of the things often talked about, they're trying to show that the failure in Greece, wasn't this dramatic humiliation that Greeks often made it out to be. They're trying to readdress old misunderstandings and mistranslations. That's like things like the Deva inscription and stuff like that. And they're trying to find successes, that Xerxes actually achieved that is often overlooked. So look, we've got some modern historians here that have popped up throughout, but Bridges, Olmsted, and Granger are particularly, they really, really try and provide a balanced and more pro-Xerxes kind of standpoint. Now, in terms of Persepolis, now this is, when we look at Persepolis, just for what it can provide us, now the first one, I've actually just tried to show you how it can link to the dot points. If your study is just purely from a dot point perspective, this slide might help you. So the site I've kind of separated by the actual archaeological site and the tablets, the inscriptions we find at Persepolis, and the reliefs and images that we find there. Okay, so if you think about the dot points, in terms of the idea of kingship, what we find for the administration, obviously the building policy, and stuff like that, links to the site. Okay, again, the inscriptions can link to all of these things, linking to his religious policy, obviously building policy obviously talks about how he becomes king. It talks about how much he's trying to show the justification of him getting king as opposed to his brothers. Okay, and I've even tried on each of the bottom line to give you some exact pieces of evidence that, guys, I cannot underestimate. You need to know some of these specific pieces of evidence, okay? The Deva inscription is a good one to tuck away. And the reliefs, the images, again, we find some visual representations of all of these things. Obviously, images and representations particularly, okay? So really, really, really good to use. Obviously, in terms of even images and representations, guys, the idea of that royal iconography and, Xerxes fighting mythical monsters and all of that kind of stuff, even though it's not linked to particular, like, specific events, it's still quite helpful, okay? And once again, to use this graph again, when we're talking about the value and limitations of Persepolis. Now, guys, don't forget, historians still argue the exact meaning, significance, and role that Persepolis actually played. Okay, so it's not in 100% agreement across the board. So again, thinking about sources, the value, facts, the opinions, the perspectives. Obviously, this is a Persian perspective and Xerxes' perspective in a wealth of sources that are very often Greek, and the fragmentary nature of, Persian perspectives. Persepolis is pretty important. Okay, now the limitations. Things are sometimes symbolic rather than literal. Essentially means, rather than some of our Greek historians who say this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, Persepolis is a little bit all over the shot, and some things, as I said, they're more symbolic than actual specific events, which is what some historians think of things like the Deva inscription. Yep, so they're non-narrative, they're more fragmentary in nature, and obviously, guys, there's a bit of propaganda working here as well for Persepolis, okay? So this is just to help guide your notes. You already know this stuff already, but this might actually help guide your notes, just in case you get that question for choosing one source, the value and limitations of a source in understanding Xerxes or assessing the reign of Xerxes. Thank you very much.